I was thinking, don't freeze. Don't freeze, okay? You don't need to disassociate, you don't need to flight, you don't need to fight, and you don't even need to fawn. Like I was really like rolling through even though it was just a matter of minutes, but rolling through all four responses in my head subconsciously almost because it becomes like muscle memory when you work on it. Like
When you know your own default stuff.
right. I was like, I can't respond in an unhealthy manner in any four of these.
Welcome back to Filter Optional.
Yes. Hello, Chico.
Hello, Shannon. I was thinking, Shannon, we have our intro. People are listening. If they're listening to the intro and stuff like that, they're getting a taste of who we are. But I think you are fitting right in to what our intro's about. You are the filter. But I don't think I've been much no filter in a lot of these, last 12 episodes that we've done. I haven't been my no filter self. Maybe it's age. Maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's, less testosterone. I don't know.
What? I mean, what are you talking about? You're always filterless. You don't even know it. You have such little filter that you don't even know that when you are having more of a filter than not. You don't have a self-awareness around a filter.
Well, there might be some truth to that, but I was just thinking, just interacting the years having Gaston House, I truly had no filter with those guys and those families. Then at Casa, I started to get luckily Kay kind of brought me in, and I had some other staff that reined me in because we were licensed, and now it's like, man, I'm kind of yearning. I'm yearning for missing a little bit of that. Just
okay, but see,
no
that's
filter.
part of the. For those that know, they know that that's kind of part of the ADD situation. Like you're always looking to pick a fight, like, and so you throw out these unfiltered bombs because you like want the response, you like love it, it gives you adrenaline, and it's so.
Well, it stimulates my mind.
Yes,
It's like I get stimulated. It's like part of understanding my adult attention deficit disorder that I think has been there since I was a child. It's like I get my prefrontal cortex just kind of start to light up when I get a little rise out of people.
Yeah, that's so fun to live with. But yes.
It is. It is fun. It's never dull.
No, it's not. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today kind of has to do with your kind of go-to, responses to things.
Yeah, but also not just my go-to. It's like everybody's go-to. But my go-to is I've seen, and
Well,
I think
you don't have to talk about your go-to yet, but
I know, but I've seen just over time, and what we're going to talk about today, I'm not going to say it, but what we're going to talk about today is like we have these responses, but I think sometimes as you age, as you go through change, as life circumstances happen, these are responses that we get into. But I was thinking before we started this episode, I was going, man, I have not been that much of a no filter. I was a little more no filter when it came to the episode on treatment centers. It's like, man, I didn't hold back. I didn't what sometimes I feel like playing the game.
Well, I mean, I think in your own head is the only place, it's the only location, it's the only address where anyone would know whether or not you were playing a game or not. Like, I'm not playing a game in life. Like, it's not, it's a game to you.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if it's a game. I see what you're saying. I think it's more for me, it's not as much yes, it's not a game. It's like
You don't like
I
to.
feel stifled. I feel held back.
Yes,
I
by
feel
compliance.
yes, and
You
I
don't
don't
like to
like to be in a
comply.
box.
You're a contrarian. So
Yes,
you really like to have a contrary opinion on
I like to
things,
stir up stuff.
regardless. And yeah, yeah, one of our children likes to too. But it's
And then the other one doesn't even
you just
respond.
stirred up your hair.
I did stir up my hair. I saw that.
God, you're like the mad professor or whatever.
But today, we are going to talk about responses. We're going to talk about responses. What are our default responses? When conflict arises or when uncomfortable situations happen, what's our go-to response? I don't know what we're going to call this. Maybe it's default responses, go-to responses.
I like default just because
I like default,
it's
but
kind of a but I like default because default to me is means that it's kind of automatic. It's kind of autopilot. It's a little maybe subconscious sometimes. That's why I like default. And you could say go to also because, but a go to makes it more of a conscious decision, in my opinion. Like you're actually in control. And so I think when we're going to talk about being aware of these responses and how to manage these responses and regulate. I like the word regulate also.
I love the word regulate.
So I kind of like default. I kind of like default just for that reason. For that reason.
Or, we also thought about, maybe this is your mode of operation, your MO.
Right.
What's your MO response? What's your default response? What's your go-to response? But when we're talking about today, you and I, about responses, you look this up and you know what will come up on the internet? What will they call these 4 responses?
Oh, trauma responses.
Yes. They'll call these trauma responses. And what you and I are saying, yes, they can be trauma responses, but sometimes it's not even trauma responses. It can just be, at dinner with some friends, and this is the go-to.
Right.
This is the default.
I follow this gal on Instagram, Raquel. She's like
I like her.
Yeah, the capacity expert or whatever. So I want to give her credit. She is awesome. And she's kind of talking about now how if everything is trauma, then nothing is trauma.
Yes.
And so, she's just talking about, so that's why that's why when you Google this, it says trauma responses and all the literature and all the articles are about trauma responses. But we're changing it to default because not everything's trauma. Trauma has its place. And if everything's trauma, then nothing's trauma. And so we want to make sure that trauma is addressed appropriately when it's trauma. But this is everyday stuff. This is default stuff. This is not just trauma responses. This is
at a dinner party,
every day.
How you respond, with other people. And so what the responses are, and we're going to say them real quick and we'll come back and break them all down. But it's like when we're going to stick with default, if you're in conflict or there's something that comes up or, it's
even just a hard discussion.
Or something's uncomfortable. Today I had a button down shirt. I need to get back to when I got that shirt. I was about 8 pounds lighter. It was uncomfortable. It was kind of spreading apart, because I have about 8 extra pounds on me, But so the default responses are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Right. And most people, if they haven't been living under a rock, have heard of fight or flight. I mean, we hear about that all the time with the nervous system and they've heard of it, fight or flight, and they're like, okay.
Or like you and I being married, you might have a couple. One is more into fight, one is more into flight.
Well, but I'm not even talking about like from a counseling or coaching perspective. I'm talking about just everybody everyday living. Like you've heard of fight or flight.
Yes.
And it's a scientific response. It's a nervous system response. I think fight and flight are in medical books. We'd have to ask our doctor friends if they learn about that in medical school because it's an actual
In psychology, you do.
response. Well,
Yes.
not psychology. I'm talking about like it's an actual nervous system response.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. And then there's also default responses. And a lot of time we're going to talk about freeze and fawn also. So all 4 F words: fight, flight, freeze.
I like that.
Or
4
fawn.
F words.
4 F
the
words.
4 F words. Maybe we'll call them the 4 F words.
Right. Well, maybe. And that's good. And so with those 4 F words, I think it's so important to talk about it because I didn't feel like I fell into fight or flight as my default response to things. And so I never did feel like I could figure out how to regulate my nervous system because I didn't fall into those. I was like, I don't want to go get in a fight. And I don't flee really. And we'll talk about kind of what I do and we'll do some examples and a good example. But all to say, we all do default to one of these 4.
Or maybe a combination. That's
or maybe
the other,
a combination. Yeah, certainly I think you can change, you can change your default address on Amazon.
On the situation.
And on the situation, but I'm saying on Amazon, and I know this because our son changed the default address, I don't think purposefully, but to his fraternity house when he was ordering stuff off Amazon. And so I was ordering some things for me that I didn't want delivered to the fraternity house. I had to like cancel the order and everything. And I was like, why is this the default address? Okay, so you can change.
You can change. You can do those
default
things.
Response, but
and so it's wild when you think about the 4 Fs. Our default response. In uncomfortable, or conflictual, situations, or something that you deem uncomfortable, someone else might not deem uncomfortable.
Like you,
I mean, that like
and
me. Yes. And so how we come at things is real different. But let's break down, Shannon.
Okay.
Right now, I got a good example of fight. And I've used this example for years. Okay.
And
so it's crazy. I have
so what we're gonna do, we're gonna give examples of each. And then I think we can tell a big story where they all kind of come into play, right?
Yes.
And then I would like to share towards the end the book that I want to write and about regulation and all that stuff. But that was an idea I had about 12 years ago. Okay, so we're going to talk about fight first. Go ahead.
Okay, so fight. This is kind of my go-to. I get stimulated by it. I go to it. I think genetically it's just been hardwired into my DNA. And so it's crazy. And the deal is, before we kind of break down fight, all 4 of them, these default things, they might be trauma responses. You Google this, it'll come up as trauma responses. But we're taking the trauma out of it. Okay, let's say it's not trauma. It might be wounds or however you were raised. All 4 of them aren't the healthiest ways to respond. Okay, so it doesn't mean that, if your go-to, if your default is fight, that doesn't mean it's worse than flight or freeze or fawn. None of them, if you're really dealing with some conflict or if you're dealing with uncomfortable situations, none of them are real healthy. So you and I talk a lot about what's healthy and what's unhealthy. But getting back to, my DNA, it's like I'm the oldest grandchild. My dad was the oldest boy of 6, grew up on a working cattle ranch. It's like, the West, so there was a lot of them. There were 6
The
boys,
wild west.
down outside,
Yes.
San Antonio, Texas. And they just some of them were bull riders,
Real cowboys. I mean,
real
really.
cowboys,
Rancher,
working
cowboy.
cattle ranches,
Yeah.
did not back down from anything.
Rip from Yellowstone.
But not as jacked up. I mean, all 5'8", 5'9",
They're pretty jacked, but
they're jacked, but they're not
if they're
6 feet tall.
listening, if they're listening, you're still jacked. Yeah.
Yeah. But the wild thing is, I tell this story being a therapist, is like my uncles, they went and had a therapy session as brothers. There was 5 of them. This was 35 years ago. Okay. So they're in their 30s and 40s.
To get on the same page and communicate better.
And just to have a mediator, because they realized they grew up on this working cattle ranch, and boys, how a lot of times boys fight to unpack situations, and they're going, okay, we can't do this. Let's go to the therapist. They go, they get in there, and they're very well behaved. They say the right stuff. They leave the therapy session, and 2 of them get in a fist fight in the elevator.
No, it's kind of humorous now, just because it's like, wow, that's the default response.
That is the default response. It's the default response. And maybe there was trauma, but I'm not even saying there was trauma. It's like, that was the default response. I try to put things, when people come in as a group, as a family, and there's this intensity, I use that example. Now, some families what we'll talk about is the other, responses, the other defaults and stuff like that. But my family of origin, my dad's side, that West blood, man, it was about fight.
Yes.
And here's the crazy thing, is like, they stopped in my high school letting brothers be in same classes.
Because of you.
Because of me. And I have a brother that's 2 years younger, and we were in speech class, and he was mouthing off and stuff like that, and we got in a huge fist fight.
Because you feel permission to kick his ass because he's your brother, but you're in school and you can't do that.
That was my default.
Right. I know. Listen, I'm going to throw this in here, because since we have been married, so you were a grown man, you and your brother got into a competitive argument in the backyard. You were competing. Everything's always a competition with boys. And those of you that have boys know this, but because I ended up with 2 boys. So everything's a competition, but you all ended up kind of in a headlock situation in the backyard, and you were taking forever, and we were supposed to leave or something. I can't remember all the details, but I ran outside and I said, okay, let go, and we got to go. And you both were like, we can't move because we'll hurt the other. If we move, one of us is going to hurt the other, and we don't want to do that. It's like, okay, you idiots, then just release. And so you all basically said, okay, if you say release, we'll release, or whatever. But
but getting back to exactly, it was that fight mentality.
Yes.
That was our default. That's how we grew up.
Yes.
And so it's like that had been imprinted in me, throughout life. But you don't fight with women. That was definitely, you don't do that.
Yes.
My grandmother,
that. Yes.
my grandmother, ruled the roost of these 6 boys. No one, everybody was yes ma'am, no ma'am. But it was all right with other males. So my uncles go and do, this therapy session. There's 5 of them. My dad had been dead for a long time, and so this moment, and they leave, and things weren't responding. And their default, they probably didn't feel seen and heard. Weren't feeling safe. There was this uncomfortable, this conflict going on, and their go-to was to fight it out. That's what happens, and it doesn't need to be actual fist fighting. It can be just fighting with raised voice, anger,
Defensive,
defensive, yeah, reactive, just kind of, hey,
irritability.
yes. And maybe the puffing up of the chest. I've seen a lot of women, their go-to can be fight. I mean, they'll get into
Yeah. Oh,
screaming and
sure.
stuff like that. So this isn't a male default response. This
And
can be a female default
right,
response. You see it, if you're a parent with little kids, when they throw the temper tantrum,
right.
when they do that kind of stuff. That is that fight.
And
No.
and
And
you don't want to throw any of the responses. This applies to all the responses, but you don't want to throw any of them out the door because they are all God-given responses in my opinion. I think God gives us these responses for different purposes. And so like the fight is for safety and to, you know, actually, they say that people get, superpowers, like, or not superpowers, but you know what I'm saying, like strength. If they are fighting off an attacker or something, it's how women can get out of situations sometimes and whatever. But
yeah,
so
and so that's why
you
we're
don't want
not
to throw
saying
them
they're,
out,
and
but
that's why
yeah,
we're not even saying it's their trauma responses. These are
right.
default, and
Or good
that
or
can be,
bad or right or
yeah,
wrong. They're just,
yeah,
it can be healthy or unhealthy. Like,
and a,
obviously, if
and a
it's
lot of times it can,
necessary,
yeah.
it's, yeah.
And if you think about it, from a biblical perspective, King David 3,000 years ago, he was a warrior. He fought. He fought
Yes.
against the enemies. Moses did too. I mean, over and over. Peter, one of the disciples, man, he was a fighter. He didn't. Lots of times, people that their default is fighting. They don't really have a pause button.
Right.
There
Right.
isn't that, like, wait a minute.
But
But
it's
we need some of them. And
yeah.
it's very, it can be very good. So what you said, and I want to repeat it, it's not good, bad, right or wrong. It's what we're talking about. Is it healthy or unhealthy? And
Right.
sometimes these four responses can be healthy.
Right.
Many times though, they're unhealthy. And
Like
they're
I
not
think of
just
that
trauma response.
like I think of that song. This is going to take some people back and show my age, but Kenny Rogers' song "The Coward of the County."
Oh, yes.
It's like he kept being told by his dad that, you need to, you know, stand your ground and you need to, walk away, walk away, walk away, walk away, walk away. But then when his wife is attacked, he goes into fight mode. And sometimes you got to fight when you're a man or whatever. But that
And that's
song is
why,
good because he regulated it, but and he was called a coward. And so then, but then he used it when he needed to. Anyway, I don't know if that
well,
makes sense.
it
That song makes
makes,
me cry.
yeah, it makes total sense. And what I was going to say about, the, there's some real good in the fight.
Yeah.
There's some real good in the fight. But what's happened the last several years is this, is really bashing men. You'll see more men about fight, but this
Toxic
toxic masculinity.
masculinity. Yeah.
Yeah, this toxic masculinity, and how we need to limit that. And no, man, that is what is in who we are as men. That
Right.
there is something good to fight for.
What's
Fight
the
for our
toxic
marriage.
piece that needs to be
Yes.
eliminated, not
But
the masculinity and the
yeah. Y-
healthy fight that is in a natural part of masculinity is a healthy fight. But the toxic part needs to be, yeah.
Yes. And so, but what we did, the extreme that we've seen in our country is like, no, take away all masculinity. It's like, yes, let's take away the toxic and this, bravado or machismo, mindset. But no, the fight is good, and it's good to have a fight. We watched the national championship, this Monday night, and Indiana and Miami on the football field, they had a good fight, so
Yeah,
to speak.
football. Yeah.
It was good. So there's that,
So
and
that's fight.
recognizing what
Yeah.
your default is. And
Right.
that default in me is is the fight. Now it's not all. Many times it's not healthy. But let's talk about flight.
Yeah.
What we mean
Yeah.
by flight.
And so I think just like we were talking about how they have some, you know, God given, you know, benefits or whatever, but the flight is, you know, protection. You know, you tell your kids, you know, leave the party if things are going south,
Okay,
or
that's the good things of it. But let's just really
yeah.
talk about what happens.
Well,
When
I'm
you're
going to.
in
We're summing
uncomfortable.
up all of them. I'm about to just clear out that's the benefit, yes. And so that's the good thing. I'm not going to talk about it again, okay? Because we're talking about all four and we're getting it all in. So now, yes, the flight, the let's talk about the avoidance and the anxiety and fear and panic, and you just you flee you from situations or uncomfortable conversations or situations or things like that. That's not
Yes.
protection. The unhealthy. Okay, go ahead.
And what you actually do, you actually might just leave the situation. What we've seen, this extreme thing that's happening right now is this flight, this flee, is like you're seeing people say they're just not talking to their parents anymore. They've unpacked some, trauma or some wounds or whatever, and it's gone to this extreme of, okay, there's no more communication. That's that flight, that fleeing,
Right,
that
because there is
running.
some some healthy protection in a taking a pause in a relationship. They go no contact. They call it that's the big thing. Oprah did a big thing on it. No contact with your parents for a pause or a sabbatical or a time period to not have contact with someone that you
Family
might have
members.
conflict with, or that you're unpacking some stuff. That is that can be fine, but they've taken it to the other extreme where it's like if everything's trauma, then nothing's trauma. It's like if everything your parents did was wrong, then nothing they did was right. And then where's the personal responsibility in that? Like, where are you taking? You can go no contact for a time period for the right reasons and healthy reasons. But if you are just fleeing, avoiding hard conversations or not willing to take personal responsibility for your part in the situation, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's that.
I
It's
don't know.
also when your flight or fleeing is, yeah, man. A lot of times it's driven by this perfectionism. It's driven by this need to have everything all right and in this nice basket. And so people can do it in real. I gave a very good example of fighting, leaving a therapist office. Things didn't go well, and my uncle's actually got in a fist fight in the elevator. Not all five of them, a couple of them. The flight is, this uncomfortable, conversations. Things aren't fitting right. Not actual clothes, but just those things. Is people might just actually do the Irish goodbye. Do go upstairs, leave the situation. They actually might get in their car and drive off. Those are the flight things.
Or
It's
like when your kids are little and they run away. They run away. I put that in air quotes. Like I remember my brother was gonna take off and he was running away, and my parents said I think he had a suitcase packed or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, well, where are you going?" And he said Boston. Well, he had never been to I don't know why he said Boston, but he was going to go to Boston. Now he just hung out on the corner for an hour or something and then came back. I don't know if he's ever been to Boston. And he's 50 years old, but so I think that that's kind of what kids can do when they don't want to get in trouble or don't want to have a hard conversation or don't want to take responsibility, like kind of for what they've done, is the flight comes in, right?
Yes, and so I do want to go back to the healthy parts of flight. What what we say is like, when your kids are in high school and they're at these party situations, it's like, man, don't put yourself in those situations. You might need to leave, to flee, to get out of, underage drinking and drugging and stuff like that. That could be a healthy flight. It's going to be
Right.
hard to do as a teenager, but man, it's like not all flight is bad.
Right.
Flight from, really, dangerous situations.
Yeah.
It's like right now, I just read this big article on where we went on our honeymoon. The U.S. State Department is saying, don't go there. It's not safe. They're saying
Really?
yeah, Jamaica is very unsafe right now. And so
And they had a lot of hurricane damage, didn't they,
yeah.
too? So there's
And
probably
so it's like there was like, it was
everybody's
category
probably in
3.
trauma response or sorry,
Yeah.
default response because they're Anyway,
Yeah. And
yeah,
so that's interesting.
a
Okay.
lot of
So
things.
let's go to freeze.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can talk a lot about freeze a little bit, but
Why don't you do that?
well, I would say some of the healthy things can be just a pause, a timeout. Like I like to talk about superpowers that I would want. And
Yes.
one is invisibility because I just would like that to disappear, maybe,
Yes.
fawn. Okay, which we'll get to. But, and the other would be to stop,
Time out.
time out, like to stop everybody from moving except me and then kind of get my stuff together and then click a play button and everybody does whatever. So that can be good for a timeout or whatever, but like I am such a rule follower. Okay, that is I'm firstborn, eldest daughter. There's a lot about that right now too. Rule follower and compliant and all of those things. So to get pulled over by a police officer is terrifying for me. It's horrible. Those are situations, and I have been pulled over before, and I freeze. I kind of disassociate. I space out. I'm stuck. And then I feel shame. If your default is freeze, you can feel so much shame that can cause kind of a depression. Like I go spiral down if I get a speeding ticket. Whereas 2 other people in my family, really 3 probably in my immediate little family, just ignore tickets. Like they just don't even like there is no freeze about anything, but I absolutely freeze. And so it's situations like that where my nervous system just can't handle it. Like I can't even I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, and you get immobilized, and you become, in
Yes.
a way, freezing becomes this kind of paralysis.
Yes.
And so
And then you're stuck and I'm just
and it's like, but when you think of it, let me paint a picture. It's like you're in you're it could be family, it doesn't have to be family, but let's just say you're at a family gathering and there's 10, 15 people, and you see 2 of them. See the person that's default is phrase. You see a couple of them get into kind of maybe talking about politics or religion, or there's some kind of fighting going on. Not physical. It doesn't even have to be physical fighting, and we talked about that. But it could just be voices raised, tone changed. All of a sudden, the person that freezes, they just kind of hide back into the corner. They just
yes.
freeze and just really want to sink into the couch. They want to
And it
be
yeah.
immobilized and stuff
Yeah,
like
and
that.
in a sense it protects me.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, if I don't make any movements, then no one is going to call on me, like in class, or in an argument. If they're having a discussion, a debate, let's call it a debate, not even an argument. If somebody's
Not
having
even an argument.
a debate, and I don't want to be in the debate, then I'm going to freeze because it's like, if I don't move, then I don't have to be a part of the conversation.
And
I
I can
don't
melt into
they're
the
not gonna
wall.
call on me. I
Yes.
can melt into the atmosphere and not be and it keeps me safe from
That's your default.
protection. It's a brain protection. It's not
Yes.
an actual protection. It's not like putting up a
Force
bulletproof
field.
vest and a
Yeah.
force field and that I
You're
would
not
love to
Wonder
have too.
Woman blocking the
Right.
bullets,
Exactly. I
and
would
so
freeze everybody anyway, so that
yes.
it wouldn't matter. I could freeze everybody and then run.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's freeze.
And so
Um,
once again, the good things about freezing is people sometimes, not all freezing's bad. When you can pause before responding and reacting, see the person, the unhealthy part of fight is there is no pause. There is no boom. The healthy part of freeze is you pause and go, okay, am I not in a safe place or whatever. But fawning, I like fawning. Fawning's one that a lot of people, don't understand. We don't talk about. But fawning, if you have a, there's the roles of kids. If you have four kids, let's just call it four kids. You have the hero, the scapegoat, the lost child, and the mascot. And you could almost put that into these default things. It's like the fight is the hero. The scapegoat could be the flight. Oh, they're always leaving. The freeze can be the lost child, but the fawn will be the mascot. They're the ones when things get uncomfortable, when there's a debate, when something doesn't feel right with them, they get into people pleasing, distracting, making jokes, being funny,
conflict avoidant.
yes,
That's me.
lack of boundaries, loss of their own identity, joke about it, try to distract
It's
whatever's uncomfortable to
de-escalation. It's
yeah.
de-escalation.
But
So
they have the fawning person really has difficulty saying no. It's really interesting.
yes, yes. And I fall into fawning more than I do freezing because freezing is kind of specific to for me. It's kind of specific to like getting caught doing something that I is against the rules or whatever. I always froze if people would say, "Here, just sneak in that, back door to something or whatever it is." I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but like sneaking in, I would freeze and I would get caught. I wasn't getting in. And so that's freeze. But fawn is more of a because I'm uncomfortable with what's going on, I'll try to, just make it better or make it more comfortable for everybody or,
Change the subject. Yeah, it's
so the
de-escalation, but
gift,
it's
the gift can be de-escalation. Like if you
yes.
are in a situation
That
that
needs
needs
yes.
mhm.
But the fawning really lots of times it's like, hey, the gift is de-escalation, but really when it's not in that healthy place, it's distraction. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, it's like let's take the attention over here. Let's get into people pleasing. Let's get into, hey, let's avoid conflict. Get into fixing and rescuing and, not having boundaries and trying to solve the problem. But the person also loses their identity, when that happens.
I mean, we kind of covered all four of these and how they can when I wasn't aware of my default, there was no awareness of how to keep it from being unhealthy and then keep me from, I don't know if healing is the right or because it's all about regulating your own like nervous system and your own.
I like what you said about, the little example with the Amazon and, Beck making, his fraternity house the default, address. When we have these default responses, to conflict, to things that are uncomfortable in us, if we don't really recognize and know that that's our go-to and where that's coming from, we will get into real unhealthy patterns, and it'll always be our go-to instead of, no, this is who I am. This is how I'm wired.
Yeah.
It's not bad that you fawn
Well,
or freeze. It's not good, bad, right or wrong. If, I fight or flight, because I'll
right.
sometimes just say, you know, I'm out, peace out, and
Yeah.
just check out. And that's not good, bad. But if that becomes my go-to all the time, that it is my default, but if it becomes my go-to all the time, I can't change the address like you did on Amazon
Right. Right.
back to this.
Right.
And so
And
when you can,
it becomes unhealthy because I just thought of an example, like, because your default is fight or flight, I'm not throwing you under the bus, I just thought of an example. When we were first married, if you didn't want to stay at a party or a wedding or whatever it was, if you didn't want to stay, you just left. I mean, or you would just say, "I'm leaving right now, Shannon. If you would like a ride, you're leaving with me." And this was kind of pre-Uber and things like that, and there were times when it would make me feel very lonely and like, oh, like, and I don't know, like, wow, I have to leave. And because you were defaulting to your like, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to. I'm not having fun. This is not good for me. I'm out. The Irish goodbye thing. But so when you are acting in an unhealthy way in flight, you're not taking into account. It's real selfish. It can be real selfish, which is what I can do in my. I don't mean to point you out specifically. I just thought of that example.
no, but I love that example because that is a good example. I've done a lot of work on that, and I've unpacked it and talked about
You don't do that
those,
anymore.
and I
You have
don't do that anymore. And I
healthy flight. Yeah.
share with you, hey, I just preparing if we're out, knowing that it might be a lot of people drinking and stuff like that. It's like it's just I don't drink, and the conversation gets bad after about
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
And so I let you know, and we've communicated about it, and I've said, hey, I don't care, I might just go home. Okay. So we talked about it, but with you would freeze or fawn, and oh, come on, it'll be good, and that wasn't healthy. So we
Right. So that was
both of
my
us were
default.
doing both
Yes.
of us were doing all four of these responses without doing that, and then we both
Right.
started to work on it and hear each other.
Right. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, that's okay if you want. And if I want to stay, I don't feel guilty or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all working
So
together in a healthy manner. And so, do you want to
So
give the
Shannon,
big
what I was
example
thinking, I
after
want to
we've
give the
worked on it?
big example.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've kind of framed it up. And so the big example, and I want you to jump in wherever, because you were there. You were sitting literally next
I
to me.
know. And I don't want you
And
to
so
be too crazy specific. I mean, it's not
I'm not going to
necessary.
be too crazy
Okay.
specific, but I don't even really, it wasn't, it's not that
It
big of a,
wasn't. No, it's not.
no,
It's not.
it's not that big, but it's what I think happens with people
It's just a
all
good
across
condensed example of
all
yeah.
across America all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We went with these, I'm gonna say 3.5 couples. So
Yes.
it was 4 couples, but one of the guys, his wife had to stay back. But we went down to Mexico and we're with them, and they invited us, and we know them, but we don't know them real intimately. And this was the last night at dinner, and we've been, the guys have been playing golf, y'all had done spas, there's 3 women, 4 guys. We're at dinner, great dinner, man. It was
Yeah, these
actually
details
the
don't
best.
necessarily matter, but okay.
But so it's a long day, it's a long dinner. I'm not drinking, but there's nothing, no one's getting drunk, but people
No,
are having,
yeah. Again, those
but I'm just
details
giving,
don't matter.
yeah. But I'm just saying, this is what I think happens is like we're sitting there, and these people kind of live in our neighborhood, and we're this discussion comes up, about this big kind of board meeting that I just came and spoke at, but I haven't been in part of all the decision making and stuff like that, and I just was was questioning, and the guy sitting literally across from me, good guy, he had been a part of it and a part of the whole process. And I was sharing, I didn't appreciate how she responded to me. She was wrong.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think it's important. You shared a lot of unnecessary details, but really the debate was about a particular date. Let's just say that. About a particular date.
I
And then
agree. Okay.
okay.
Okay. So it was about a particular date, and it was specific about the date. And I go,
Yes.
no, no,
You
actually,
said
I
this
said
is
no.
the date. This is the date. And then
And then he said, no, you're wrong. And I
said
go,
no, that wasn't the date. And then it was escalating because why?
of
Because people's default.
was fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And
Okay.
so
And
the guy
so
across from me was saying, "No, you're wrong, Chico." And I go, "No, that's the date." And I kept hammering in. I remained calm. He was
yeah.
calm, but you heard the tone go up a little more each time. And
Yes.
he was going, "No." I go, "No, this is when," and I would give my evidence, and I got into a little evidence war, but we were, and I don't think either one of us were uncomfortable, and I was just
No.
telling him, "No, actually I'm right." And I go, I do know I'm right. And
Yes.
and
At
he
the
goes,
time, which is totally fair, you both thought you were 100% correct. I mean, and that
"Yes."
happens,
And that
you
happens,
just,
but it was
so
it was it
anyway.
was becoming, the tone was increasing. There was no
Okay. So
fist
let's
or
talk
anything.
about, so you two were in the discussion and kind of fighting. I mean, I guess, or
Yes.
whatever.
It
You
was
were
it was it was like,
kind of,
"Hey."
yes.
And
Okay.
he raised his
So,
voice several times and said, "No, you're wrong, Chico." I mean, just
right.
really
Okay. So
calling me out.
the other two women at the table, their default at that time was freeze.
Bam, hands down.
Neither of them said one word. You could tell they were frozen. They didn't get up and say, I'm gonna go to the bathroom or just disappear or anything like that, like or whatever. It was freeze. Okay. They
Yes.
were just stuck. And then,
The guy sitting next to who I was in, who there was the fight, the conflict, the disagreement, and
yes.
disagreements happen. He was in flight mode. He was
Well, no,
he
no, no, no,
was
no, no. I think he was in fawn.
No, you're talking about the wrong
No.
person. I'm saying the one
Okay.
sitting next to was
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, yes,
yes.
yes, yes. Sorry, sorry,
Say
sorry. So
yeah.
one um person at the table was in flight. I mean,
It
he
was
wanted
checked
to
out. He
run
was
away,
boom. Yes. He
go to the bathroom, go to the, next table,
wasn't
you
saying
know.
anything, was completely out of it. And then the two people sitting next to me, you and the other man, y'all both, you got into some fawning, but he definitely did. But you got into that fawning of,
Well,
avoiding the
well, let me
conflict.
talk about myself
Okay.
because I was there. What happened to me was, since we have done so much work individually on all of this, and I've done a lot of work on identifying my default responses in situations and regulating my nervous system and all of that kind of stuff. I realized that when the discussion started, I was like, oh no, this has the potential to go south because I knew the stakes and whatever. I was thinking, don't freeze. Don't freeze, okay? You don't need to disassociate, you don't need to flight, you don't need to fight, and you don't even need to fawn. Like I was really like rolling through, even though it was just a matter of minutes, but rolling through all four responses in my head subconsciously almost, because it becomes like muscle memory when you work on it. Like
When you know your own default stuff.
right. I was like, I can't respond in an unhealthy manner in any four of these. And so I do think that I landed kind of on de-escalation, but so fawning or de-escalating,
In a healthy way.
but
At
I think I
first, I
landed
think
on it on a healthy in a healthy way.
that's what I
Yes.
said. Yeah, in a
Okay. I
healthy
know
way.
you did. I know you did. I
Yeah.
was just finishing my sentence because do you want me to you want
No,
to talk about the other
I
fawn
wanna
first and
I
then
wanna talk about the other fawn
I
and
can
then
talk
kind
about
of
my
wrap up.
response, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and so
go ahead. Okay.
the other guy that was fawning is, he was he
Explaining the jobs on the
jobs.
board
He
and
was trying to he was trying to de-escalate by changing the subject. That's what the fawning person will do.
right, and it's
You
a
know,
volunteer position. Everybody
and
has the best of intentions, and you
and
were
that would
never questioning that.
that
I
was
mean,
never the
never.
discussion. That was
Right.
never where the conflict, the
It
disagreement, the
really was
date
just on a
was.
date. Yeah.
It was nothing about that. And so it was like there was like, hey, let me throw this out there. And he was okay. We gave him the floor. He had that, but it still
Yeah.
didn't. It's
Right.
still we went back to no, you're wrong. No, I'm right.
And then when I finally jumped in, I had done a lot of like automatic, like work spinning.
But so
But
let me pause and ask you
yeah,
this question because it it wasn't. And what we're saying, I think this happens to people all the time when you go to dinner parties, when you're with people, that this isn't uncommon.
it's
Nothing
kind of
bad
every dinner
happened.
conversation. Nothing bad
Yes,
happened. It really was like, I
but
mean,
people, if you can pause and go, what's going on with myself? It's like I think there's a part of you, and I could be wrong. It's like you did a great job, when you at the end and everything, but it's like it was uncomfortable.
it was uncomfortable
It was
because we
uncomfortable.
were in invited guests and we were, it was uncomfortable because and it was the last night and I didn't want it. It was like it doesn't have to end this way. Like this is so
And the other two women, you could tell by their facial expression, whoa, this is
it was a
weird.
hot topic and
Yes.
it whatever. And
And
so
and one of the women that was the host that invited us, she's a grandmother. She has three adult children,
yeah.
adult daughters. So she doesn't understand, a lot of
Well, I
the
mean,
boy.
you're assuming she doesn't understand it.
Yeah,
She
I'm
probably
assuming.
does. She was
Yeah.
just, I mean, so anyway, that again, those details don't matter. But the point is that I finally looked at both of y'all and I just said, y'all, it either is the date or it's not. I mean that's just what I ended up coming up with as my response. I was like, I mean, somebody needs to I mean, I didn't even say somebody needs to find out because it didn't I go, it is either is the date or it's not. And that's it. Let's just,
Let's move
whatever.
on.
And that was
Yeah.
it. And then we
Then
went on and it
then
was
we went
fine.
on and we, got a ride back
Now
to our place.
now it did I did
Trigger.
it yeah, a little bit activated me and my nervous system a little bit because I had trouble sleeping that night. I kept waking up thinking, "Oh gosh, what is the morning going to be like?" Just because it was our last morning and we were all leaving and I don't know, there was just I was unsettled about it because you were so stuck on and I kept thinking I didn't think you were wrong, but I actually wasn't sure of the date you were targeting because you're such a date guy that I figured he's likely I would bet on you with a date because whatever. But I was like, what if he's wrong? And this just taints. The whole like trip. I don't know. I was uncomfortable and I was falling into my kind of freeze mode, but I was in bed, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so when I got up the next morning, you had woken up
I'd been
much
up for a
earlier.
while. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can tell the end of
And
the
so
story.
where
I wasn't there,
I'm
but
up and I'm out, drinking coffee and that couple, the guy that I was struggling with, he was there, and the guy that was in the flight mode was there, and his wife, who was in the freeze mode, he came in and he was part of the committee, and he knew all the dates, and he had all the
the
correspondence and
yeah.
emails. And he goes, "Hey, Chico, I need to apologize to you. I went back and looked at my notes, and you were correct."
Right.
And so the cool thing is, I like that, is like I stuck to what I believed was true. It didn't
Right.
turn into a big fight.
No.
He did, I love that he apologized to me. I didn't need to apologize about anything I did. I was appropriate. I just stuck to my guns.
Right.
Um
It's
and
just interesting how that's just a good, and then you came in when I woke up and I said, and you told me, and I was so relieved. And I thought, oh, it's just the way relationships roll and the way things work out, but that's an example of how it
and
can all happen.
well, and it really, going back to the beginning of this podcast, when you were talking about Raquel, when she's saying, you know, either everything's trauma or nothing's trauma. It can't be all or nothing.
Right.
It's like, we just painted a picture that all four of these responses happened, but there was no trauma about it. There wasn't
No.
trauma with me. There wasn't trauma with him. There wasn't trauma with it got intense.
And at
And
the end of the
intense.
day, it's about me and how I'm feeling and how I'm dealing with day to day life and everything, and not to make it selfish or about me or anything like that, but we only have our own bodies and nervous systems to deal with. And so it just gives you a lot of freedom if you can identify these default responses and in everyday things. And then anyway, does that
Yeah.
make sense?
So it's good. Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm gonna save the other stuff. At the
For
beginning, I
another
said if we could get to some of my other F words, we'll do that. But we'll do another F word episode.
podcast.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
about that?
I like that. So watch your defaults, understand where what your go-to is. You might have a couple, you might have all four. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong.
Right.
It's like, okay, is this a healthy response or an unhealthy response?
Right.
What's going on? Begin to ask yourself those questions so you can regulate yourself.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but until next time, peace out.
Peace.